sell your company, you've made millions and millions, you're never going to have to worry about money ever again, and then you feel incredible depression. I think purpose keeps you alive, not money. And people that I invest in, I'm looking for purpose. I'm building a platform to help people for free learn business because at 15 years old, I couldn't afford a consultant and I tried and they wouldn't help me unless I paid them. So I kind of logged it as like, one day I'm going to build a platform that helps people. What school didn't do for me, didn't give me how I understand how money works. It didn't teach me how business works. One day I'm going to build something that does that. If you think you're not a salesperson, then you don't know how the world works. You either control your narrative or someone else controls it for you. When you go for an interview, you're selling. When you meet your partner, you're selling. Sales is the top of it all. And it's not a dirty word. It's the word that will make you rich if you learn to embrace it.
What would you say are some traps that people should watch out for?
They're drugged up on pointless TV, overload of content, wars, being broke, that most people are in fight or flight. This is another interesting thing. I think in this day and age, I'd probably get cancelled for this. So I say it cautiously.
Simon, thank you so much for coming on the Iced Coffee Hour.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So to provide a little bit of an introduction, your story is extremely impressive. You were homeless at 15 years old. You then sold a company to PwC for an undisclosed amount. You founded 18 companies and invested in over 80 more. Google estimates your net worth to be $640 million. But before we go into that, can anyone be an entrepreneur?
I believe everyone can be. I'll go further and say everyone has to be going forward.
Why do you say that?
Combination of AI is going to take away a lot of the traditional jobs. If you're a truck driver, stacking shelves, those jobs will be gone in the next 5 to 8 years. If you're a lawyer or even a doctor, next 5 years, those jobs are gone. So what are people going to do? Universal basic income will not give you the life you want. It's kind of a mini COVID, right? Sitting around just covering your bills and surviving. Humans need purpose. I think you can find purpose leveraging the entrepreneurial method. And I think everyone can be taught it. School just deliberately didn't give people the tools to do it.
So should people be, though? Because I've noticed, and Jack and I were actually talking about this before you got here, that we don't think everyone can or should be an entrepreneur. And there are some people out there that are just wired to want safety, security, at least to a certain degree, where they don't want the responsibility. And as someone who's been self-employed since I was 18, I could almost look at the opposite side and romanticize just how nice it would be to have days where I could just check out mentally at 5 p.m. and just show up, do a task, and leave. No more responsibility. There seems to be something nice about that.
I understand. You used the word wired. I'll use the word programmed. I think people are programmed to think that they can't do it or they shouldn't do it. And the honest truth is I've accidentally had jobs and I have been a boss. I choose being a boss every single day. It's like I choose to be rich every single day. I think that the problem with this hypothesis that not everyone could be an entrepreneur is that a lot of people are missing out on an opportunity to understand what entrepreneurship is for them. So, for example, if you're an artist and you like painting, then make a living out of it. Now, yes, of course, frankly, working for someone else is stressful. Anybody listening to this podcast who works for someone else has never had a single day of stress? Of course not. Your boss comes in and they're angry. New management come in, maybe you're going to get fired. You need a pay rise because you can't make your new mortgage payments, but they won't give it to you. You think working for someone else isn't stressful? Maybe you just haven't felt it for a long time. Working for other people is hard. I think it's harder than working for yourself. Is anything good easy? No. Is being an entrepreneur hard? Yes. But should people learn the skill so they've got the option? Of course. School does not teach people how money works. It does not teach people the basic essentials of things like sales, which anyone can learn. Now, of course, if you don't want stress in your life, sure, never leave your house. That in itself will make you stressed. There's no way people live longer if they have stress. That's why when people retire, a few years later, they die. We need stress. We need to evolve our skill set. And I think being an entrepreneur is about owning your time, which is the most valuable thing. Money buys you, and it's the most valuable thing that you can give yourself as a gift. Own your time.
So I mostly err on the side of not every single person should or could be a successful entrepreneur. Maybe we're just defining entrepreneurship differently. How would you define an entrepreneur?
Owning your time. Doesn't have to be about being Elon Musk and making lots of money, although cool, you can do that too. I think it's just about you get up every day and you decide what you're going to do with your day. I think success is enjoying what you do every day. And so people aren't engineering their lives that way around. They're engineering their lives around the house they want, the car they want. Then they have monthly payments. Then they have to get a job to make those monthly payments. They're not thinking about what do they enjoy to do every day. And that can make money, or not as much money, but you enjoy your day. Like, I just don't understand. Humans are amazing. We've got a supercomputer on our head, right? We're incredible. Literally in Las Vegas today, I saw a guy holding a sign saying McDonald's that way. A breeze block can do that job. Right? Why have a supercomputer if you've got a breeze block holding a sign? Holding that sign, the human is the breeze block. It's insane. So everyone's scared about AI. I'm excited. I think it's going to free the human race, but we have to get everybody ready because they're going to literally have no job. And if we don't prepare people with the new skills, which I think is understanding how money works, understanding what is your purpose, which is a very deep question, but answerable if you start asking it, and give people a sense of being, a sense of enjoying their day. And that's not happening right now.
So why are so many people complacent without doing any of that, without ever finding a purpose, without ever finding a meaning, without ever pushing themselves? They're perfectly happy.
They're drugged up. They're drugged up on pointless TV, overload of content, wars, being broke. Most people are in fight or flight. Right, I would say 90% of the population are in fight or flight. They literally, when your brain is in fight or flight, you're in this mode which is, I need to survive. I can't listen to anything around me. I can't educate myself. I can't learn anything. That part of my brain switched off because I have to survive. I have to pay the rent today. And if I don't, my family gets kicked out. I don't have any money for food. What shall I do? They're just desperately trying to survive. They're out there hunting mode. They're not in learn how to hunt mode. So I think that's the problem. And I personally believe that's been kind of part of the systems. The system likes it. If you're not in debt, there's no profit for the banks, right? The system needs you to be in that position.
And what about for careers like doctors, lawyers, engineers, where they're not entrepreneurs, but they could be really passionate about a career that they don't necessarily own their own time?
They are entrepreneurs. They're just trained in a particular thing. And I think it's interesting. My wife, who I met 22 years ago, we started a business together. She was a graphic designer. And when I met her, I said, "You're an entrepreneur." She said, "No, I'm a graphic designer." I said, "No, you're an entrepreneur. You have a skill that you can apply to make money and you can own your own time. All you need to know is how to charge properly for that time and how to do a contract or how to register a company. All of this stuff is easy." So I partnered up with her to prove this point, and we built one of the most successful creative agencies in Asia ever together. And I consider her an entrepreneur today. Finally, she says she's an entrepreneur. But I think that's doctors are entrepreneurs. And I would go so far as to say, I believe so much in AI and what's about to happen, that if you're learning to be a doctor today and you've got 8 years to go, when you come out, you're not going to be a doctor. You're going to be working for an AI company that are doctors. You might be a consultant at best. You're going to be working for the AI companies.
So what's your prediction with AI? What do you think is going to happen?
If we educate people and prepare, it's going to be the best thing for humanity ever. If the right people are in control of it, because it's definitely going to be controlled by someone, human race is going to be set free finally. But if it's not in the right hands and the right people, and we don't prepare people, it's going to, I think, cause like a zombie life. People just wandering around pointlessly, wondering what the point of their life is.
Which side are you leaning towards?
I'm fighting. I'm not leaning on either side. I'm fighting for the positive outcome.
What would lead people to becoming zombies?
Well, COVID is a good mini test. You give people, in England, I don't know what happened in America, but people got 80% of their income given to them. And then, but certain people got no money at all, but a large proportion of the demographic got 80% of their salary, and they were told to stay in their house, right? Because it was dangerous outside. And mental health went through the roof, 70% increase in mental health. And it hasn't dropped, by the way. It's still huge amounts of spiking in mental health, especially for young people. So I think we had that on a mass scale if we don't find purpose for the human race. So I really believe we have to fight right now and educate people on what they could be doing with AI takes your job.
See, I tend to think it's going to go in the direction of AI is going to give you all the dopamine you need. It's going to give you all the experiences you need.
Yeah.
And as long as you could maintain $1,500 a month for enough food and a room, there's nothing that says you can't plug into a system, live your dream life mentally. Sure, it might not be in the physical world, but mentally it might be indistinguishable from the real thing. And you could have the same dopamine hits as you would in the real world, but just manufactured by AI.
Yeah.
That's where I think.
I think if the bad people get hold of it, that will happen.
Okay.
Because that's what Mark Zuckerberg wants you to do, to plug into the Metaverse, plug into his head device.
Right.
I don't want humans to live that way. Do you want to live that way?
Would you? You know what?
No.
Imagine if it's indistinguishable. I'm taking it indistinguishable, and 10 times better. Let's just say
By the way,
it gives you the right amount of stresses, the right amount of challenges, the right amount of everything, and you can't tell it apart. If you can't distinguish it, I'm curious.
No, because
You wouldn't do it?
I would know in the back of my mind that it's all fake. And for me, that would make it impossible to enjoy it.
By the way, they do say in simulation theory that imagine 500 years from now, right? I mean, I was just wearing one of the recent headsets that Apple have produced. It is so crazy. My brain thinks it's real. So imagine where we're going to be in 500 years' time, right? So whoever's listening to this podcast now, whatever they're sitting on, however they're listening to this on, it's all a simulation. The theory is it's already 500 years from now.
That's
So you don't know. That's the thing. You don't know this isn't real. Although that's why people have God and religion, because they back of their mind, like, there must be more, there must be more. So they pick religion, for example, right? So you do have that. Billions of people have that splinter in their brain. This is it? Is this really it? Is this all there is? Really? What's the purpose of life? Really?
If it's just a splinter, I can take it. But if it's any more than a splinter, if I have any shred of evidence, then I think it would be a really, really catastrophic, existential issue for me.
The thing I find really important in this debate that we're now suddenly having is I like humans to have a choice. So I don't mind it. If you give people a choice, that's fine. What I think's going to happen if we're not careful is people are going to, like now, social media companies have tricked you into scrolling all fucking day long. And I'm part of this, by the way. I want to use social media for social good, but you have to have good people on the internet and bad people on the internet, and then they're going to have a fight, right? I feel like you need both good and bad in there to fight. But I see people already drugged up. Like literally, like if I met my wife 23 years ago, we walked past each other. That wouldn't happen today. I literally walked past people in the street here in Las Vegas, like didn't even look at me, looking down at their phone the whole time. They're already drugged up, right? It's just somehow we've accepted it. It's built up slowly. It's immersion. We haven't seen it dramatically change, but it has changed. People are already drugged up.
See, the problem is if you give people a choice, most of them I feel like are going to choose the wrong option. Like you give people the choice already to eat healthy, to go to the gym, to stay off your phone, to not like scroll social media endlessly. And most people are doing that. So I feel like giving the choice, it's automatically going to be heavily skewed.
But I think if you look at, it's a very good point. But when I hear you say that, what I think is it's heavily skewed because of the heavily marketed evil side of the equation. So marketing on McDonald's just never stops. I think I've seen the McDonald's sign since I've been in America every 10 minutes. So yeah, eventually when I'm hungry, I'm like, fuck it, I'll have a McDonald's, even though I hate that stuff. I hate it. But like convenience, timing, hunger, brain. So I think we've got to get the message out. That's why I'm fighting online. I think we've got to get the message out in a positive way that there is another option. There is another option. You don't have to be scrolling all day on your phone. You can build a life you want. Why don't you create instead of consume? Why don't you eat better? You know, I think that's why we need more content, giving the other side of the equation the option to at least get people to choose it. Right now, people don't even, most of people's choices are subconscious. They're just doing it by default. What their friends are doing, what they see the media tell them to do. It's not what they want to do. It's what their algorithm has taught them to think.
What are your thoughts on the entrepreneurial grind set, that hustle culture? Because as someone who's worked with so many different companies, do you feel like that could be detrimental, or do you feel like that is a necessity?
I think there's a time and a place for grind. I think there's a time and a place for hustle. I think when I was younger, I hustled like crazy. But as I got more experienced in business, I realized there was a big lie that we were told. We've been told the harder we work, the luckier we get. We really believe it. That is a lie. And I discovered it by accidentally hiring someone really smart to run one of my companies. And I worked less hard and made more money than I'd ever made before. So suddenly I'm like, hold on a minute. And then I realized billionaires, you ask them, they might look like they work hard with their social media teams and so on and so forth. But I promise you, Elon Musk has never put a car together himself. He's never sat up all night building a space rocket, right? These people who are really successful, they work very efficiently. I mean, Elon Musk is famous for working hard. Very efficient is very different. A lot of risk is what you need to take. The truer saying is the more risk you take, the luckier you get. The harder you work, the more chance of burning out, the more chance you don't make it to the finish line. But there is a time and a place. And I don't think, it's like a kitchen or a restaurant. Like a restaurant has to have good food. That's like a default. Probably working hard to be successful has a default. But I don't think it actually guarantees success. That's for sure.
So if taking risks is extremely important in becoming lucky, how do you know which risks to take?
I've studied risk and luck quite intensely. When I sold my company, I kind of retired for 2 years and I went deep on what is luck and how does luck work. And it's probably worth quickly explaining what I learned. It was a very long, deep dive, but luck is actually hackable. So 2% of your life, approximately 2% of your life is unhackable. It doesn't matter how hard you work, where you're born will make a difference in your life. It will definitely make a difference. If you're born into certain situations where you get access to basic education and sanitary environment where you can live until you're at least 10, wherever you were born will make a big difference to your life. But another factor, 98% of your life, you can hack your luck. So one part is take more risk. The more risk you take, the luckier you get. Second element, key element, is know your destination. Where are you going? People get in a car and they run out of fuel before they've got somewhere because they didn't know where they were going, right? And then have a purpose, like a mission, something that really drives you, something that will get you up every day, something needs fixing, whatever it is for you. It doesn't have to be a big problem. It could be a problem that matters to you, right? And I think that ensures more luck. Those 3 steps ensure more luck. You can hack it. The nuance of like being successful or not successful in luck is that if you don't prepare for luck, right? It's that whole saying, if you don't prepare for luck, you won't get lucky. So I spent 15 years building my first company, and then I got lucky because the big 4 accountancy companies in the world, the massive big conglomerates, decided they were going to get into the creative space. And I just happened to have the largest independent creative agency in China when they were looking, right? So I stayed alive long enough, and we almost went bankrupt quite a few times. I stayed long enough to have that massive piece of luck. Right. But I only stayed alive that long because I enjoyed what I did.
Can we go back and talk about your first business, like where you got started and what sparked this interest?
When I first started, I was 15 years old when I started a company. My father died suddenly of a heart attack right in front of me. And I thought he was joking. And then he wasn't joking, he died. And then 3 weeks later, I was 15 years old, hormones, call it what you like. I had an argument with my mum and she said, get out of my house. And I did, and I never went back. And I basically slept on the street for 8 weeks. I slept in friends' houses, slept on couches. I didn't like to tell them my mum had kicked me out. I was embarrassed. And anyway, I ended up sleeping on the street. I tried begging. First time I ever begged, someone spat at me in the face. It's like, so I'm not very good at it, clearly. And then I tried to get a job. So I went into a bar and I went into a wine shop and tried to get a job. First of all, I smelt at this point. I didn't look employable and I didn't have an address. And in England, you need a national insurance card, a document that allows you to get a job. They need this number before they can give you a job. So I just couldn't get a job. There was no chance. So out of sheer desperation, I call this the moment when the entrepreneurial muscle woke up in my head. I was walking past a big house and it had a really messy garden. And I remember thinking, that's a really nice house with a really messy garden. They must have money to tidy up that garden. So just through sheer desperation, I walked up the drive, I knocked on the door and I said, if I clean up your garden and take care of it, will you pay me? And they said, sure. And they said, how much? I said, £200 a month. Just picked a number. And they said, sure. And then I said, I don't have any equipment. They said, use the stuff in the garage. It's fine. And that's it. I started a gardening company.
Was 200 a lot or a little?
At the time, it was a huge amount for me. That was like, I could get a hostel for 3 and 4 nights for that money, and food, and live pretty comfortably for 3 or 4 or 5 days, maybe longer. So it's huge. But I soon realized that one garden wasn't going to be enough, and that doing it on my own was not possible. So I had to go knock on more doors. And no one ever taught me sales. No one ever taught me how to get a contract done. No one had taught me to collect money, deposits, none of this stuff. I just did it, and no choice.
I'm curious, being homeless at 15 just sounds horrifying. Where would you sleep when you were homeless at 15?
So I slept in lots of different places. I slept in a park on a roundabout one night because if you sleep on the floor, animals get into where you are. So I discovered that sleeping on a roundabout, I don't even know what a roundabout is, but I forget in America what you call them, probably roundabouts. But I slept on one of those for majority because it was off the ground, harder for animals to get into where you're sleeping. Believe it or not, I slept alongside other homeless people because actually there's some warmth in it and some comfort and some community. So I slept with a lot of homeless folks in puddles. Like, it's really interesting. And the other really interesting thing about that time, I haven't talked about it much, but I found how kind people were that were also homeless. Because people instantly think, when you say homeless, they think drug addict, bad, whatever. Some really kind people that literally have nothing, but they give it to me. Like, I remember someone sharing their baked beans with me, very cliche, but like that the poorest of people are sometimes the kindest. Because they've been there, they know what it's like to suddenly be out in the cold on your own, and they were showing me the ropes. Of course, I also saw bad stuff, like people taking drugs, people glue sniffing, and if anyone listening, there's probably the image they have of a homeless person is a drug addict. But you sleep in the streets for 4 weeks, no one loves you, no one cares about you, you'll turn to drugs.
Did you ever feel like you were in danger? Because 15 is young.
Yeah, it is.
I thought I was an adult. I look back now and realize I wasn't, but I was a strong, I was captain of my rugby team. Like I was a strong, I was a big 15-year-old, like I looked like an adult. And so I never felt scared. In a really weird way, I felt kind of hopeful. I know that sounds really strange describing it now, but like I wasn't going to school anymore. I had none of that kind of clique stuff going on. I didn't have anyone telling me what I was going to be. And I think that's when I figured out who I actually was. And I also saw stuff that I never really want to see again. So I'd love to be a part of eradicating homelessness. It shouldn't exist in this modern world. What the hell are human beings being forced to sleep on the street for? That's crazy. But the point is that I think if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't be where I am today. I see that bad luck as good luck now. Because I saw when you have nothing as well, you have nothing to lose. So like a lot of middle class people get trapped by their house and by their car because I had nothing. I knock on that door and that person says no to me, or they say yes and I do the garden. I win. I can't get any lower. And I think that's a really powerful place to start for anyone.
It makes sense that you're hopeful because, like you kind of mentioned, the only way is up from there. The part that's crazy to me is that you were able to, I don't even know if I would call it swallowing your pride, but you had a home that was available with a bed in it, with a shower. And you said you went to this first interview and they wouldn't hire you because you smelled bad. You probably looked pretty ragged. You still never went back to just where you knew a shower and a bed and food were.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. And without, my mum is still alive, so I want to be respectful, but she is a narcissist, if I'm being blunt about it. And and by the way, narcissism follows in my genes too, potentially. So I feel like I'm fighting that gene to not be a narcissist myself. But I realized once I was free that she also controlled me in a very strange way. And I didn't want that control in my life anymore. So I was what she wanted me to be. And it was all about her, especially after my father died. It was all about her. Now, she lost her husband, but I lost my father. So I didn't feel like I could express that. Every time I expressed my pain, my mum would make it about her pain. And I just needed to express my pain, having lost my father. So there's a part of me that didn't want to go back. It wasn't about the accommodation and the shower. I didn't think about that stuff. I just thought, right, I'm free. I've got to make this work. The Vikings call this, by the way, and this is a business strategy I now implement in all of the things that I do. The Vikings used to call it burning the boats, right? So you get England, they used to go to England. All the boats that got the Vikings to England, they burnt them all. There's no going back. You make this work or you die on this island. And I didn't realize that's the strategy I was basically employing. There was no going back. There was no going back to a life where I was told not to feel pain, told how I should act, told who I was going to be, right? This is the life I'm going to make for myself, even though it's painful, even though there is an easier option. By the way, again, in metaphor in business, I say this all the time. People that have a job they hate, they have to give it up, have some pain to start a business of their own. You have pain at the beginning when you start a business of your own, and over time it gets easier.
Although before we go into that, you might be asking yourself, what does the future hold for businesses? Because if you ask 9 different experts, you're going to get 10 different answers. From a bear market, bull market, interest rates are going to be going up, interest rates are going to be going down. It'd be really helpful if we had a crystal ball here.
But until that happens, over 40,000 businesses have already future-proofed their business with our sponsor, NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud ERP, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one fluid platform. Basically, with one unified business management suite, you have just one source of truth, giving you all of the visibility and control you need to make quick decisions. Plus, with real-time insights and forecasting, you're peering into the future with actionable data.
When you're closing the book in days and not weeks, you're spending less time looking backwards and more time on what's next. So whether your company is earning millions or even hundreds of millions, NetSuite helps you respond to immediate challenges and seize your biggest opportunities. And speaking of opportunity, right now you could download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/iced. The guide is free to you at netsuite.com/iced. netsuite.com/iced with the link down below in the description. Although at this point you might be asking yourself, what makes a leader stand out? It's not just about taking charge, but about setting new standards and embracing bold moves. If you lead by example and live with passion, then our sponsor, the Range Rover Sport, is made for you. Every model of the Range Rover Sport offers a unique blend of dynamic sophistication and sporting luxury. It's where refined elegance meets visceral power. With focused on-road performance and world-renowned off-road capability, this vehicle rises to every occasion.
Experience the adaptive off-road cruise control that adjusts to your terrain and dynamic air suspension for superior agility and control. Plus, Adaptive Dynamics ensures smooth, composed handling by minimizing unwanted body movements.
For those who elevate their desire and lead by example, the Range Rover Sport is more than a luxury vehicle. It's a statement. Discover it today at LandRoverUSA.com. Again, that's LandRoverUSA.com with the link down below in the description. Thank you so much to the Range Rover Sport for sponsoring today's episode. And now let's get back to the podcast. What was your next business after doing the gardens?
So the garden business eventually failed because I didn't know in England you have a winter. So no one told me. So the winter came, the garden business completely died. And I got a job for first time in my life in a hotel. And when I was working in the hotel, basically the entrepreneurial muscle in my brain had now been turned on. Everywhere I looked, you probably all got friends that are annoying like this. Anyone listening, they've got friends that are annoying like this. Well, every time they see something, they see an idea in it. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to me. My brain came alive. There wasn't an idea I didn't see. So I was walking around the hotel one day, doing the front of house. I was employed to do front of house and marketing there. And I heard the receptionist pick up the phone. And the receptionist said, "We're full. Sorry." Boom, put the phone down. So happy that the hotel was full. And I said to her, "Well, we spent so much money getting that phone call. You look very happy that you could just tell them to sod off, right?" She's like, "Well, we're full. What can we do?" I'm like, "Well, how about we take their name and number and we help them find another hotel room. We find them somewhere else nearby, similar, and book it for them. And then we can get commission in that other hotel booking." So that's what we started doing. So I started a second business called Accommodation Express, doing just that. So people listening, this is before the internet. Mm. So this is literally the telephones would ring at hotels. And when the hotel was full, which is quite often in London, hotels get filled up for various reasons. The hotel would then refer the booking to me, and then I would find a place for that person to stay and we'd all make money.
How long did it take to develop the website, to create the business, all of the logistical stuff? Because I know for a lot of people that have an idea and they want to start a business, that is the main obstacle for them. It's not the fact that they don't think it will work out, but they're like, I'm just going to sink so much time and effort into learning these new skills. How am I going to find the right people to logistically make that work? How did you do it?
So it's so easy today. Before I start plugging brands by accident, but insert any web hosting company today. I work with GoDaddy, but insert any web hosting company in it today. And I can build a website in 1 minute and it will cost me nothing for a month. And they're all templates. So accounting services, they're all apps. You download it, they literally will give you 3 months free, nearly every single one of them. You can set up your bank account online. It's never been easier to start a business. It's just so bloody easy. And yes, you can argue, well, it's easy for me because I know it. There's YouTube videos I've personally made dedicated to showing you the 5 things you need to do to start a company. Building a website is not complicated. Now, if you're going to build the next LinkedIn,
okay, yeah,
that's different, right? But if you're starting a gardening company, a flower business, you're starting a home cleaning business, you're starting a window cleaning business, starting a podcast editing business,
sort of trade.
It's so fucking easy. It's so obviously easy. And the best way to learn anything is start. It's like, how do you play basketball? It looks complicated to go watch a tutorial. Just start playing. You'll find out where you're good within the team too. Are you better being back as defense? Are you better being attack? Just start playing and you'll learn to play the game.
So how successful was Accommodation Express? When did it really start ramping up?
So again, that business failed eventually. I say it failed. It didn't fail under my watch. I sold it to someone. And I made a little bit of money, and then it did go on to fail because it didn't innovate, and you then had hotels.com and all these big players come in and completely wipe out the telephone ringing option for people. But I sold it for a little bit of money at the time, for about £50,000, which is a huge amount of money for me. And I then had the option to stay in England and build another company or maybe get another job. I was really kind of open-ended. And then a friend of mine told me about Hong Kong. And he said to me, come and visit me in Hong Kong. A friend of mine was living there. And I had the chance to go to Hong Kong at 23 years old. And I never looked back. I call going to Hong Kong my second awakening. The first awakening was when I was 15 and that entrepreneurial muscle woke up in my brain. The second time was when I went to Hong Kong and I realized how big the world was. Because sometimes where we live, we think is the world until you go out of where you live and you see what's really going on. And I sat in the Hong Kong harbour, looked out at that city. I don't know if you've ever been. Have you been?
Mm-mm.
It blew my mind. Literally, I felt my mind explode. This is a city that has no natural resources, that is incredible. Skyscrapers left and right, mountains behind, all built from human brain power. It's not like Dubai that has oil money. It's complete brain power, that city. And I thought, if you can think something, you can make it real. That city taught me that. And then I lived there for 20 years and built my next business.
And the $50,000 sale price, how did you arrive to that? How much money was the business making in revenue and profit for it to reasonably sell for $50,000?
Interesting. So it wasn't making much profit. I remember thinking this at the time, like, how does a business sell for any money if it doesn't make profit? And it's the first time I experienced this concept of potential, right? The business had potential. So the person that bought the business had an idea of how they could scale it. But I didn't really want to scale it. I had other ideas of my own at that time. This was almost like a hobby to me, believe it or not. I didn't see it as a long-term business. It was a hobby. I wasn't particularly interested in hotel rooms and hotel bookings and stuff like that. I like marketing. I wanted to learn more about marketing. So to sell it and have some free time to figure out my marketing genes and what I really wanted to do. But I sold it on potential. And at the time, it wasn't making much money. Turnover wasn't bad. I think actually, the turnover, I think, of the whole business was like £100,000. So I halved it, and that's how we got to the price. But the profit was near zero because I was spending money for
servicing. Right, but you had client
it.
list and you had all the infrastructure set up.
Yeah,
so that was where a lot of the potential was coming from.
I remember when I sold it, the person who actually bought it from me, I remember the conversation so clearly because they actually sold to me what they were going to do with it next. I've had that experience since, by the way. A lot of people think you have to sell it on turnover or profit, right? What was really interesting, it's like maybe the best way to explain it would be, I don't know if this is true in property, but if someone looks around a house and it's finished in every way, people are slightly less interested in, the garden still needs work or this needs, I can put my own mark on it. They can do something to it to make it their own. So don't completely finish a house, right? Like I bought a house in London. They deliberately left the garden untouched. The rest of the house was beautifully done. The garden wasn't done. So I could go in there and I remember walking around with my wife, we can make the garden nice, make it our own. And I think the business had that same thing. Like my last company is saying, when PwC bought it, they're like, you know what we're going to do with it, Simon? We're going to do this. Like you want people to come in and feel like they can add value to the thing that they bought. If there's no value to be added, you've taken away all the potential. Then why would they're just going to buy turnover then, and they're just going to buy profit percentage or profit.
So then you moved to Hong Kong with your friend. Tell us about this next business that you started. This is the business that sold to PwC for the undisclosed amount. How did that come about?
So this is another interesting thing. I think in this day and age, I'd probably get cancelled for this. So I say it cautiously. I moved to Hong Kong. I was looking at what to do. I actually started initially a logistics business, just shipping, because stuff going back from Hong Kong to England. And I just started a little logistics company just to get my feet wet in Hong Kong. And then I met someone called Helen Griffiths. And she was a really talented graphic designer. And I remember asking her, how much are you charging for what you do? And she said some ridiculously small amount, like $500 US. I was like, you should be charging $10,000 US for that. And she's like, well, I don't like to talk about money, and I just like doing the work. I think I mentioned to her earlier, right? So I basically said to her, look, I'll be your business manager. Let me negotiate this for you because you're undercharging, and I'll share the profit with you, the difference. So that's what I started doing, but I actually fancied her. So there's a big motivation there. She was beautiful. She's now my wife. We have a baby together. But at the time, I was motivated by two things. I was 23 years old. She was beautiful. I wanted to date her. And also she was talented and she was undercharging for her skills. So these days, I think you can only mention one of those things. You're not allowed to mention the fancy.
Where'd you meet her?
In Hong Kong.
Just like how?
Yeah, when I moved there, I stayed. This is a bad story. When I moved there, a friend of mine was living there, and he was in a flat with two other friends of his. So he said, Simon, I'm traveling a lot. If you want to stay in my apartment for a few months until I'm back, to get your feet on the ground in Hong Kong. And so I moved into this apartment. His two friends there, I got to know them. On the first night, Tom, the guy who was living there, if he's listening now, he might hate me for saying this, but he just said to me, I'm going for dinner tonight with a group of friends. There's one girl there I really fancy. Would you like to come with me? And I was like, sure. And he took me to dinner with him, and the friend that he fancied was Helen. So
how did that play out?
Well, interesting. I said, because you don't shit where you eat, right? Yeah. So I said, after the dinner, I deliberately ignored Helen at that dinner, by the way. And then after dinner, I said to Tom, look, you fancy her, I fancy her. She's beautiful. And he said, I said to him, look, I'll give you 1 month to make a move. And if you don't, I'm going to ask her out. So my main motivation was to get him to like go for it, right? Plenty of fish in the sea and all that. So, it's fine. I'll let him go for it. But he didn't do it. A month went by, he didn't do it. In fact, he did worse than that. He kissed a load of girls in front of her, and then I found out later she didn't fancy him anyway. But but I gave him a chance, and that meant for the whole month I didn't talk to Helen, and I think that's why she liked me.
Because it worked,
everyone else was an accidental sales
interesting.
technique. Yeah, I wasn't that good at sales with women back then. I was
You're playing hard to get.
Yeah, I've never played hard to get, except that one time. Because I'm normally quite honest when it comes to
very smooth. Jack, you should try that.
Okay, so I'm curious, how did you break through that barrier of like being acquaintances to actually being a romantic interest? I know for a lot of people that's like the most difficult and challenging thing to see if they're interested in you. How'd you do that?
Right. Now it's going to be a dating podcast.
I'm just curious because this is just it's interesting.
I would honestly say I'm only good at one thing: business.
Okay,
anything business. Relationship. I've had a marriage for 23 years, and I'm very happy. How to get a girl? Probably you need to get advice from someone else. But I only talk from my personal experience with sales in general is be yourself, be upfront. And if you really like someone, then you just have to show interest in them. Now, of course, you can end up in a friend zone in today's world, I guess, but probably being honest. The first time I went on a date with Helen, I told her everything. I even showed her my bank balance, by the way. I just everything.
What?
You showed her your bank balance?
How does that come up?
Well, it's more because I didn't get the bank statement out.
Was that a flex? Or
no, it wasn't. At the time, it wasn't a flex. It was the opposite of flex because in Hong Kong, everyone's super rich, right? So it was the opposite of a flex. Yeah, I mean, if I was in England, maybe having £50,000 in your bank account is a flex. In Hong Kong, it's a joke. That's a weekend party in Hong Kong, right? It's nothing. Partly, I wanted to know that. I wanted to know that I'm not one of these rich bankers in this city that's here to just flash money. Because I was living in quite a nice apartment because it was my friend's apartment. So I just wanted her to know who I really was. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to build things. I like building businesses. That was my thing, So actually, it was the opposite to a flex. I wanted her to know that I'm not any of. She had a load of rich guys that ask after her as well. So I just wanted to know that I'm not one of those guys yet. I didn't say yet. I don't think at the time, but yeah.
That's a funny story, huh? Showing a bank statement on the first date, that's definitely a next level move.
I verbally told her, by the way. I don't think I flipped it out.
How is it working with her?
Well, now?
Yeah.
Well, she's in England while I'm in the US on a tour around the US. So we homeschool our son. So we started homeschooling him so he could travel with me around the world doing what I'm doing now. But my son is enjoying doing this thing called battling, which you guys probably have no idea what that is. But kids do reenactments of historical battles. And during this last 2 weeks, my son is doing that. So they didn't come out, which I'm really sad about because I really missed them. Yeah.
Isn't that like LARPing? Live action role play? Isn't that kind of what they do? Like they set up some sort of like medieval battle.
Exactly.
Everyone dresses in their garb and then like goes and...
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about your business. What led you to starting Fluid?
Like I alluded to earlier, I fancied the designer, and then I thought I could help her, and she was really talented. And what I've always had a kind of knack for is noticing someone who has talent who's not fully fulfilling their potential. So she certainly wasn't charging enough for her skills, and she had an image in her head that she just wanted to do the work, and money was a bit annoying. So I helped her, and I think what I realized when I helped Helen is there's thousands of designers in Asia, in particular, who don't value their craft, because in Asia, like being a doctor is valued, being a lawyer is valued, a profession, that sort of profession has a lot of value, but creative value is very low. People almost see creative people as a bit nuts and a bit broke. So I realized there was a gap in the market to actually be the person who fought for creatives. So we ended up my company worked for CNN, Estee Lauder, big brands, helping them get into China, come up with big campaigns to launch their brands. All the creative people just didn't think they had any value. But without them, none of those businesses would have a creative campaign that would make them successful. So I became kind of the middleman between the creators that undervalued themselves and the brands that tried to undervalue them. And I would fight for these brands. So I became like a mini agent for hundreds of designers. So that's kind of how it happened.
And how do you eventually get to the point of selling it? And why would you want to sell it?
So I didn't want to sell it. I think this is a lesson for people. If you want to sell your company, don't want to sell it. If you really want to sell it, just tell everyone you don't want to sell it. And so what we did, and this was pure accident, I'm not a genius, this just happened by accident, is PwC, who are the largest accounts company in the world, wanted to offer services to their clients to add value beyond accounts, right? So creative and strategy services. So they could see on the accounts of a brand whether it was going downhill or not. And then they knew if Nokia's sales are dropping, they could go in there with a creative idea to try and turn that around before it became too dire for those brands. So they wanted to get into the consultancy and strategy business of marketing. But it's not their natural culture, right? So it's not their accounts firm. So they're incredibly organized, incredibly smart, but they're not creative by their own admission back then. So we partnered with them as a client partnership. So we would go to clients together and pitch our services to clients. And then I think one day they just realized they were going to make us so much money by partnering up with us, it would be a much smarter move for them to buy us. Now, that's my side of the table. If they were listening, they probably got their own version. They probably had a whole strategy I didn't know about. But I think they and this is the strategy I'd teach people if they were listening about this, is like, partner up with the people you want to buy your company one day. It's pretty interesting. And if you can partner up with a company that isn't directly your competition, so doesn't know what you know, it can be incredibly powerful. And then they'll probably try to buy you if there's lots of money in it.
Did you have any investors in the company at the time, or was it just you and your wife?
I did have a strategic investor who was operational. So what I did, which I think was another important reason it sold, is I brought in people to run the company. So I'd been running it about 12 years and I was starting to get a bit tired of it. And so I started investing in startups and I was starting to enjoy that a lot more. So the agency business started to drop off a bit because I wasn't as excited about it. So I brought someone else in to run it. And instead of just bringing someone else in to run it as a CEO, I asked them to invest in the business. So I actually brought two people in the end, mixed stories of what happened. But basically they bought a piece of the company and then they had equity if the business did well, more equity and part of the profit. So they weren't just an employee. And that was actually a key reason why I sold the company. I was able to sell the company because when PwC bought the business, if I'm running it, then they need me locked in forever. But luckily I brought senior management in who had invested in the business. So when the business sold, they made a load of money as well. And then they're still there today. Guy Parsonage, who ran the business for me, is still at PwC today. He loves it. He's happy to be inside a corporation. I wouldn't have been because I'm an entrepreneur naturally. So I brought about 12 years in, other people in to invest and run it. And it's the best thing I ever did.
What was the feeling like to sell your company and get a check or get a deposit into the bank account and like refresh the page and like all the money's there?
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible that devices around us are also getting smarter as well? From smartwatches that track our health to Wi-Fi enabled LED bulbs that light up our home, technology is transforming our lives. And guess what? Your e-commerce platform also deserves to get smart too. Our sponsor ShipStation integrates with over 180 popular e-commerce platforms, carriers, and marketplaces, helping you achieve exceptional shipping efficiency.
With features like automated shipping tasks, you can manage orders from one easy dashboard and enjoy discounts of up to 89% off UPS, DHL Express, and USPS rates, saving you money while delivering faster.
Over 130,000 companies have grown their e-commerce business with ShipStation, and 98% of those customers who stick with ShipStation for a year become customers for life.
So lead your business into a smarter future with the shipping software that delivers. Switch to ShipStation today.
So go to shipstation.com/ICH to sign up for a free 60-day trial. Again, that's shipstation.com/ICH, shipstation.com/ICH with the link down below in the description. Although before we go into that, for those that don't know, I have a coffee company. It's called Bankroll Coffee, and our entire goal is to bring people the best quality coffee at the most affordable price. Of course, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that I don't often talk about, but part of the process of doing all of this was to find the best e-commerce platform to be able to sell from, and that, of course, is where I found our sponsor, Shopify. For those unaware, Shopify is home to the #1 checkout on the planet, with less carts going abandoned and more sales going.
For example, Shopify is a service called Shop Pay that lets customers save their email address, credit card, shipping, and billing information that, I kid you not, boost conversions up to 50%. And if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are, whether they're on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between.
All in all, nobody is selling better than Shopify. So if you're ready to upgrade your business and use the same checkout as Bankroll Coffee, get started today with your $1 trial period at shopify.com/ICH, all lowercase. Again, that's shopify.com/ICH, all lowercase, to upgrade your business today. Shopify.com/ICH with the link down below in the description. Thank you so much, Shopify, for sponsoring this episode. And now let's get back to the podcast.
I always think that this answer is like a clip on TikTok, right? You sell your company, you've made millions and millions, you're never going to have to worry about money ever again. And then you feel incredible depression. People wouldn't believe it, right? That's exactly what happened to me, though. It's so unbelievably cliche that, you make all the money you ever need and you think that's going to bring happiness. It brought me the opposite. There was a moment when the money dropped in the bank. That was amazing. And I remember looking at my bank. I think Mark Cuban talks about this. He refreshes a million times. I also did that. Just like, my God, this is real now. Because on paper, I was already quite wealthy. I had a very profitable, successful company. But now I had cash in the bank. But at that point, there's two things that happened to me. One, I didn't realize how money really worked. Even then, I didn't really understand how money worked. Even though I built companies, once you've got a load of money, what do you do with it? Like before I had a business, I put my expenses through the business. I got clients, I made revenue, I took money out when I needed it. I didn't actually know what to do with a large chunk of money. And so that was a bit of a weird experience. I'd gone from making money to having to manage money. And so I didn't like that. The second thing is I would meet people. I moved out of Hong Kong back to London. I bought a really nice house, bought a really nice car. And I remember I was pushing the baby around. Hampstead is where I lived in North London. And then I was sitting in a coffee shop, and then someone sitting next to me and says, I'm the only one there, all women with their babies. I'm the only guy there with his baby. And this woman asked me, what do you do? How come you're here with the baby, sort of thing? And I was like, I'm a father. I don't know what I am. I felt completely lost, to be honest. I really didn't know who I was or what I was doing, why I'm on this planet. I was too young as well, I think, to be retired.
How old are you?
I was 40.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, no, this doesn't feel right. So yeah, so to answer your question in a simple way, when the money dropped in, I was like, wow, this is incredible. And slowly but surely, that good luck became bad luck, and I lost my mojo. I just didn't know what I was doing with my life, and I lost it.
Did you buy anything?
Yeah, I did. I bought a fancy car.
What did you buy?
Well, Porsche Cayenne. And I also bought a Mini. Is that posh? No. And I bought a big house in North London, probably one of the nicest areas of London. I ate the most amazing organic food. I got a personal trainer 5 days a week. Again, that was the first time I was spending money, not on a business. Normally when I made money, I put it back into the business. I think that's another thing people should do. This is the first time I was spending money on me, and it didn't feel right. The other thing as well, I had a baby. So my whole life turned upside down, and I, sleep deprived, not knowing, how to be a good father. All my personal demons of my father dying when I was young came up again when I was no longer working. Maybe like a shark, I had to swim. As soon as I stopped, I had to go get therapy. Like why? Because I was scared I was going to die, and my son wasn't going to see. I wasn't going to see my son grow up. When he was born, it triggered all of that. So I went and got a lot of therapy, spent a lot of money on that. I'm glad I did. But that's it. After that, do you know what? I sold it all. I've got rid of all that stuff now. I got rid of my cars. I've got a Tesla, and I got solar panels on my house, so it charges a Tesla. But I just basically don't think I've got any money. That's how I act now.
So what do you own today?
I own a house, a big house, which I use for my business. So we use it as a content house. It's called Entrepreneur House. I've even branded it. I own the trademark Entrepreneur House. And I have a Tesla, which just to get around, you need a nice car. And I love that car, and I don't have to pay for fuel or take it for MOTs. Tesla Y.
Okay.
I'm not flashy. My wife owns an electric Mini. I don't know why, because Tesla's better. That's up to her. And I've got some nice paintings, but mainly they're more sentimental. So I got married in Bali, and when we were there, we bought some Balinese paintings that are quite valuable. But I don't look at them and think they're valuable. Mm-hmm. That's why I've got them. I look at them because they remind me of memories I've had of spending time in places like Bali. I've got a lot of nice artwork, but again, it's all in places I've visited. So I've gone to beautiful places around the world and bought art. But that's just personal enjoyment. I don't even know the value anymore of these things. The most important thing to me, and I took some inspiration from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs said the day his company IPO'd, he had 60 million cash in the bank. And he talked about his other co-founders who also made a lot of money at the time. They all kind of got drugged up and kind of lost it and died young. And he pretended he never had that money and went back to work the next day, exactly at the same time, did exactly the same thing. I now actually operate the same way. I think purpose keeps you alive, not money. But I will invest money in, like, this trip to America. All my teams come. So I've got 18 people on my team. I pay for my team to come. If they want to come, they can all come. So flights, accommodation. I will invest in those sorts of things, experiences, and building what we're building now. I invest heavily in that.
I've always wanted to ask this. I don't think I've ever asked someone this, but you have a net worth listed on Google. Google says it's $650 million. Is that accurate? Or are they literally just grabbing a certain number that they're doing like some napkin math and just throwing it to your name?
Yeah, this is the thing people don't understand about net worth. Okay, so first of all, just for the record, it's bullshit. Okay, I think the problem is a couple of things. Net worth is what all of your accumulated assets could be worth. This is why like Elon Musk jumps from being number 1 wealthiest man to number 5 to number 3, suddenly he's number 2, because it's about his net worth is tied up in his stocks and shares and the value of his assets. And those assets fluctuate hugely. So I think that when people are working out net worth, that it's like Donald Trump loves to exaggerate it, right? He wants everyone to think he's worth 10 billion. But depending on how you add up his asset, how much is his brand worth? Well, it's on a building in Las Vegas, so you think it's worth something. But what is it really worth? Is it worth $1? Is it worth $10 billion? Who knows, right? Until you sell it, you don't know the value of something. So net worth is tied up in that bullshit. So I am not worth that money. The other side of it is the media want these headlines to get clicks. So the reason that's on Google is because The Sun in the UK, a scummy newspaper, noticed I was trending in algorithms. Simon Squibb was trending on social media, and they want that traffic. So they put up a story, right? They didn't ring me and ask me. They put up a story saying I'm worth that, and then they listed how I made my money and all the rest of it to get people to click. Simon Squibb worth 600 million, TikTok star. This is the backstory. They need that. You know, the thumbnails. We do it in thumbnails, I guess. We do it in taglines, right? To get people's attention, you need that. Okay, and I get it. I don't mind you guys using it in a thumbnail if it gets people listening and learning that they need to fix their brains and learn business, right? I don't mind it, but I think it's the only downside to it is it's pretty dangerous. So when The Sun ran that story, I had people knocking on my door, like literally, like I'm not living in a gated community like you've got here. My house is vulnerable. You can break through my gate, and that's what people did. Knocking on my door when I'm not there. And of course, you put yourself subject to like your kid getting kidnapped and all that, right? I do not have 600 million. If you took my kid, I could give you. I don't. In fact, the opposite. I've deliberately locked up my money so I can't get access to it. So you won't get much, but the headlines are dangerous, and it can cause a lot of pain if people aren't careful as well. You've got to be very careful.
Why not fact check him, or why not have an attorney draft a letter saying,
well, fucking ring me
inaccurate.
And ask me, you know, like.
Yeah, but if they run the story and you say, and you have proof that like people are showing up at your house now and you ran this inaccurate article, why not?
We can't. It's not so easy to sue, by the way, in the UK. US, I'd sue them.
But some people won't sue, but they'll say, "Hey, this is inaccurate. Please change this.
Yes.
Here is why."
Yes.
Signed attorney.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think that's already happened. By the way, the repercussions of it, like it's in hindsight. I'm newly. I use this word loosely. I'm newly famous, right? When people are like, you're not famous, you're not famous. More people know me than I know them. That's the definition of famous for me, right? So I'm newly famous. I'm discovering what a fucking nightmare it is to be famous. It is not a good thing. No one should pursue being famous. It actually restricts your life. It restricts. When I was rich and wasn't famous, I had more freedom than I do now, right? So being famous is a pain in the ass. But I think a lot of the time, I hate lawyers. I've had one legal battle my whole life. I just don't want to deal with these people. And so when those people run bad stories, I've told them to take it down. I've told them it's wrong. You can't even get through to these people half the time. It's an algorithm and someone in a computer room. They don't fucking listen.
Yeah, but some of that is because they don't have a legal letterhead on it.
Yeah.
Like we've dealt with a few things, like random things where, you know, it's gone both ways too. That a legal letterhead goes a long way to getting a response versus if Jack and I just send an email, goes nowhere, gets ignored.
Those things go in the bin, by the way. Most of the time they go in the bin. It depends on how serious the legal letter is, but you know, like in England, most people just put it in the bin.
Okay.
Unless it's because there's no lawsuit structure. So unless it gets very, very serious, and then the problem is, do I want to piss off these media outlets, like go that hardcore? Because then they can come after me and slander me. They only need to one fake story. Simon seen shouting at his kid, child abuse or something. I've never shouted at my kid, but like conceptually, like I don't want to make these people my enemy. They're not. Media's not my enemy. You know, like I don't want to make them my enemy either. So part of me like just hopes it goes away, things slow down, and go back to normal.
I'll tell you, the problem is that people continue to Google your name, and that's like the first thing that comes up. I think when you type in your name, the first suggestion is net worth.
Yeah.
So which then just perpetuates that gets recommended even more.
Okay,
So
I'll get a lawyer on it then.
Just a
Famous
thought.
for being rich. That's
Yeah, but I'm not famous for being rich. I think hopefully I'm not.
No, you're not.
I'm
But
not.
if you look up your name and that's like the first thing, it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
I'm sure the article is very kind. I'm sure it's like,
Oh,
mostly
really? It also
good,
says I have
but
a very fancy car that I don't have.
Where do they get this information? Are they literally just like,
They I think they go through pictures and information, and sometimes even they take what other people have written. So it's like a false.
that's a lot of this stuff.
So it's like someone else has written about it, and then they reference that as if that's their excuse
yes.
for. So
Yeah.
I don't know where it all comes from, but I mean, again, though, net worth. Just to be clear, if you take the assets of some of the companies I own at the peak, and you sold them at the peak for the exact cash amount, then maybe there's some way of getting to these numbers. That's the thing. Like I never think about net worth. I think about like cash in bank, and I think about like what I'm applying in my business or what my business is making. I don't really think about like how much I'm worth if I sold everything, because I'm not going to sell all my company assets, right? I'm not going to sell helpbank.com. I mean, that alone could generate hundreds of millions maybe, but I'm not selling it. So what does it matter?
Can you say what the revenue of Fluid was?
trying to do some backwards
I'm
math.
trying to do some math.
And you
I'm trying
sell
to
it a
figure
what
out.
multiplier?
Yeah.
People might be wondering why a lot of people can't talk about the value of their company, because when you sell a company, you sign NDAs. So those companies don't want you to publicly talk about it. There's a couple of reasons, and it might be interesting for people, but like if the clients of that company found out what we'd sold their contracts for, you see what I mean? Like there's accidental brand damage done by talking. I want to talk about it. Right? If it was up to me, because I love sharing how business works and how businesses are built. I built that company from nothing. I'm proud of it. But legally, you have to see it from the people that are buying the company's point of view. They want to protect it. A lot of people don't understand that nuance, especially if you haven't sold a company before. Anyone that's selling a company, you're going to come up against this. I'm always shocked when people can talk about how much they sold their company for. Most people who bought it don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. You mentioned briefly how you were feeling pretty depressed after the sale of the company. This is something that's documented pretty well. We were talking to Tom Bilyeu about this actually after selling Quest Nutrition, and he said that he kind of had like a little bit of an existential crisis after that. How were your thoughts changed on life, money, happiness, fulfillment, all of that? Was there a certain key takeaway from that experience?
Well, one of my first TikToks that actually blew up was around this. So I'd sold my company. I'd never have to worry about money again in my life. And I was taking my son to nursery, just kind of wandering down the street. And I did a TikTok, which was basically like, I'm so lucky, I'm taking my son to school and I'll be there to pick him up. I just feel so lucky. And then in the comments, someone wrote, well, I'm broke and I have to do that. And that's when I kind of realized that being broke or being rich, there's a lot of similarities actually. Like freedom of time. So being broke is not necessarily, and I say this very carefully, having been broke myself, it's not a bad thing sometimes, because you've got so many options. And actually, if you are spending time with your kid, if you're able to do that because you don't have a big job that's taking you, traveling you around the world, that's paying you hundreds of millions, you kind of are more successful than the person that never sees their kid. So I had to get to a point where I had all this money to then realize time with my kid was the most valuable thing. But a lot of people don't realize that they got time with their kids, they're probably already rich than most people that aren't able to do that because they're making money, right? Mm-hmm. So I had a bit of an epiphany in that moment. I was like, I was lucky when I had time with my wife. I was lucky. I was rich when I had time with my friends. I was rich when I got to spend time with my kids, my brother's kids. Like rich is a very odd word. Success is a very odd word. I think they need to be more carefully defined. So when that TikTok blew up, because a lot of people have been quite negative about me, it's all right for you, you're rich, you can do what you like. But then some people were saying, well, I'm broke and I have to do that. I've got no choice but to pick my kids up because I've got no one to help me, blah, blah, blah. So I think that being that moment when that video went viral, I was like, I pissed people off accidentally by saying, here I am, rich, walking around picking my kid up. But also I got a little insight into what the world is really like. And a lot of people are richer than they realize. A lot of people are more successful than they realize. So then I started making content about how to make money and have the life you want. That's how my social media started to.
That's really interesting that you say the life in some aspects, once again, kind of walking on eggshells right here, could be very similar between a rich and a poor person, because a rich person gets to go pick up their child from school, but maybe a poor person, that's their only option.
They have to.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's just like a difference of choice.
Exactly.
You have the ability to choose to do that, whereas someone else is forced.
Sometimes that's in your own mind though. Let's be clear. Like if you flipped your negative situation to a positive, so I say bad luck and good luck are both still luck. Like Buddha always said, we're going to have 10,000 hours of good luck and 10,000 hours of bad luck. I say it's just a matter of perspective, right? So I had no purpose when, other than looking after my son and being a good father, but I had no like life purpose. So I felt a little bit depressed, but I had time to go pick up my son and take him to school. So I was looking to be grateful. I was trying to find my way of being grateful for what I had. And in that moment, I realized that other people could be a lot more grateful for what they've got, even if it's not a load of money in the bank. Like if you get time with your kids, I think you're lucky, because you can't get that time back either. Like my kid is 7 this week. He won't be 7 again, this week. You see what I mean? Like I can't get that time back. So if people have that time, that I think career should be like in stages. There's stages when you work really hard, and I think when you're young, you should travel the world and you should do all these crazy things. And maybe when you have a family, you just have a different life for a while. And then when your kids are grown up, you have another type of life. Like I think people should engineer their life around that, as opposed to like I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Okay.
No. Now, in terms of your business success, have you ever had to compromise your values for the sake of the business?
Yes. I think when I was younger, I didn't really understand. I don't know what it was like in America at this time, but maybe in the 90s, greed was good. That whole Gordon Gekko, greed is good.
Right.
And there was very much a vibe of like, to be in business, you have to step on people to get ahead, and it's all about making money. Business is tough, and don't take it personally. I think that's still kind of here today. Like, don't take it personally in business. I think it's complete bullshit. Right. But when I was younger, 15, 16, 17, 18, I just had to survive. I was very selfish. I just had to pay the bills, and I wanted to have prestige and prove that I wasn't an idiot. I'm dyslexic. So at school, they told me I was an idiot, right? Because they didn't know what dyslexia was back then. So they're literally teachers telling me I'm an idiot. So I had a lot to prove. And I think an example would be, I remember one client in the gardening business. They went away for the whole of August on holiday. And we told them we were taking care of the garden. We did nothing till the day they came back. I think that's not correct. That's not a good thing to do. But at the time, I'm like, they're not going to notice anyway. And then they'll be back and we'll have it right. But we told them we were looking after everything throughout. And I've made decisions right up until, weirdly, I think I was slightly unethical until I met my wife. When I met Helen, she made me a better person. So I tell people, your partner in life is probably the most important deal you'll ever do without a contract. It's so important. Like when I met Helen, I remember we had 2003 was SARS in Hong Kong, financial crisis. So we'd been in business a while together at that point, and we'd built a business, had a big payroll, and then SARS come, which was basically COVID 1.0 in Hong Kong. They had it COVID long before COVID, 2003, and the whole market collapsed. This disease hit Hong Kong, and things got shut down, and our business froze. And one of our biggest clients almost went bankrupt, and they owed us £1 million. Right, which is almost $1 million now. Back then it was more, it's like $1.2 million. Yeah. But I said to Helen, I was like, we can't make payroll this month. We have to pay ourselves first, because if we don't pay our own bills, we're stuffed. Helen said to me, like cold, looked me in the eye and said, no, Simon, we're paying our people first. We'll find a way around it for ourselves. We're obligated. And I was self-preservation. That 15-year-old me just was there. I'm like, no, we have to look after ourselves. I did what she said because she was right. We paid people. And then we eventually figured it out. The company made money. We collected some money and we had money come in, and we only a month or so behind on our personal rents. Right. But if I had followed my own advice, I would have pissed off everybody that trusted us. I never missed payroll, ever. In the 35 years I've been in business, every single month, on the first of the month, everyone's been paid no matter what. And I'm proud of that. But I almost broke it in that moment. And it was only Helen that pulled me back and said, no, that's not right, Simon. We got to, you know what I mean? And she made me a better person. And I think that's a really important thing, to have someone in your life that makes you a better person. So yeah, I don't know if I probably made her a worse person.
Now, a lot of people also define success in terms of financial numbers. Do you feel like there's a detriment to that? And how do you define success?
I totally think the world is really fucked up in this way, actually. I think that you should not define whether someone's successful by how much money they have. I think that my personal, again, definition of success is a combination of time and kindness. I think if someone, like for example, I interviewed someone on the street who's a nurse, and she goes to work every day to make someone's life less painful. She's not paid a lot. She works long hours. She cares about human beings. And I can see it in her eyes that she's alive and she loves her work. She's underpaid, but she loves her work. She's successful in my mind, right? Because she's discovered something that took me a long time to figure out, that what actually makes us happy is helping other people. The purpose of human existence is we used to live in tribes of 5,000 people. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't give and take. I'll help you if you help me, which is what it's like now. It was give without take, which is why I wear this, to remind myself, right? What we do in tribes is we used to help each other. You have a problem, Jack, you come to me, I help you. Like, here's the problem. There's a solution to your problem. I'm not even the person to help you in return. But we've got this give and take mindset, right? So my opinion is that the way to be happy and the way to be successful is to help someone without any expectation of anything in return.
For someone that has very little or no money and they hear that and they're like, okay, well, let me give this a shot. Let me see if this actually improves my life.
Yeah.
What is a step or something that they could do to give without the expectation of something in return?
Yeah. I say give without take 'cause it's shorter and it fits on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Okay.
But give without anything, expectation of anything in return is the right way to put it. I think, so I say to people, take 4 minutes a day to help someone with no expectation of anything in return. Anyone can do it. I don't care if you're broke, you can do it. So how could you do it? You could share someone's small business on your story. It won't cost you anything and that person might get one new customer. You could like someone's post or comment. Congratulations, well done. Won't cost you anything. You can hold the door open for someone in the street. If you're really generous, you're feeling a bit flush, buy the person behind you a coffee. I say that the 10 million people that follow me online, imagine if every single person did one kind thing for someone today. Just one kind thing without any expectation of anything in return. Like the love and the passion, the purpose and the feeling of happiness that would give the world. Those 10 million people would wake up because you were kind to them. They'd want to be kind to someone else. Kind of break the chains of this commercialization we've suddenly got trapped into, where every single deal is a transaction. That's not actually how we naturally are. That's not our natural state. So I think if you've got nothing, you want to be successful, help someone else be successful in any way you can. You want to be happy, help someone else. You guys probably felt this. And Christmas is a big thing in England. It's a big thing in America, right? Whenever I plan a present for someone, like I made my wife a Christmas card this last Christmas. I designed it myself, and I'm a really bad designer. I wrote it out. It took me about a week to make it. And then I just couldn't wait to give it to her on Christmas Day. I was like so excited. And when I gave it to her, just seeing her joy in the fact that I was happy that I gave her something, I got so much happiness out of her getting something. And then she gave me a present, a really nice present, I would add. But I felt more excited about giving a present because humans naturally were happier when we're helping someone else. Like the hardest thing for a human actually is to ask for help. That we feel really embarrassed about it. Like, I don't need help as well. My business is fine. I don't need investment. I'm okay. And we actually feel embarrassed to ask for help. It's helping that really is our natural instinct. But it's been suppressed by things like, no good deed goes unpunished. And I helped them and they didn't pay me back, or they avoid me now because I lent them some money. And, we've been trained that somehow being kind is a bad thing. But the truth is, the way we approach the kind gesture is the bad thing. If we expect something back, we expect them to do us a favor in return. You owe us something. Now I helped you, remember? That's the mistake. And I learned that being with a good woman. Helen taught me that.
What qualities do you think make someone successful? What do you look for?
When I was younger, I just wanted people that could afford to pay the bill. But now I look, entrepreneurs anyway, and people that I invest in, I'm looking for purpose. You can be average at something with a purpose. You will never give up until you're good at that thing and it's working. So I'm looking for like a reason that person's doing the thing they're doing. So my case, right? I'm building a platform to help people free learn business because at 15 years old, I couldn't afford help. I couldn't afford a consultant, and I tried. They would like, if you don't pay attention. I was like, I pay attention. I desperately need the help. I don't know what I'm doing, and they wouldn't help me unless I paid them. So I kind of logged it as like, one day I'm going to build a platform that helps people. What school didn't do for me, didn't give me how understand how money works. It didn't teach me how business works. One day I'm going to build something that does that. It's purpose. You can't stop me. I'm broke. I'm poor. 5 years ago, I was so bad at social media. Now I'm pretty good. I'm still not brilliant, but I'm pretty good. I will not stop until I'm the best at it because I know if I'm good at it, I can get the knowledge to people. I won't stop. And that's what I'm looking for in other people. I think when I was younger, I invested in a lot of businesses in the early years. I made a couple of classic mistakes. So someone really smart would say to me, I'm starting a business and filling a market gap. I'd be like, oh, that's cool. What's the market gap? It's $1 billion market size. Oh, okay, cool. And I invest in that business. And you know what? They didn't follow through. Why? Because they didn't give a shit about that problem. They cared about making money. So what I've seen, the people that are really successful are people that really care about the problem. Mark Zuckerberg, and you can love him or hate him, it's up to people. He was socially awkward. And he wanted to build something that made him connect to people and socially not awkward. And digital was his answer. That's why he never sold the company. This was his way of like living how he wanted to live. He wanted to solve a problem of being socially awkward, right? So he never stops. He'll never stop until he dies, right? Because he felt that pain when he was younger, and he basically built a company that fixed that pain for him. So I think I'm looking for that in people.
And on the opposite side of things, what flags do you look for that would be a deterrent for you?
Interestingly, and this is going to sound really judgmental, but what popped in my mind when you asked that question, and people are going to maybe judge me for this, is like people's partners. When I invest in someone's business, I now go on a long walk with them and get to know them, and I do something called the 50-minute download. I don't talk for 50 minutes, and they tell me everything about their life. And the big bit I'm really interested in is their relationship dynamics. And then the next stage, once I've done that 50-minute download, well, I don't talk. By the way, I've had 50-minute talks with people where I've learned more about that person than their own partner knows, because we find we interrupt each other when we talk, right? Having someone talk for 50 minutes is fascinating. Anyway, the second step that I always do is I meet the person's partner. So I was going to make a big investment in quite a well-known company, and I was having dinner with the person I was going to invest in and their partner. And I decided not to invest in over that dinner, because basically the way the partner was talking, she was clicking her fingers for the waiter. And then when the waiter was there, she was like, I have this really expensive food, like picking all the really expensive stuff. And then during the meal, she was talking about, well, we're not going to be traveling business class anymore, are we? That's a bit annoying. I'll do it for a while, but it can't last long. And I was just sitting there thinking, this poor entrepreneur is going to have this person on their back for years. The business will not instantly make money. It's got a purpose. The entrepreneur's brilliant. But this person on their back is going to grind them down, man. You know, that person wants something different to them. That person is very materialistic. That person's going to be complaining, oh, we're going economy again. You know, it might be $1 billion company. I know people with $1 billion companies that are flying economy. You know, like I fly economy. So I just don't like wasting money on business class unless I'm doing a long haul and I need to sleep with that side. The point I'm trying to make is when I see someone who's going to be grinding against, and not in a good way, with that person, I worry. And I know that person's going to have a very stressful business existence. And I don't want to be a part of a journey of someone that's being ground down. So I look, ironically, to answer your question in a simple way, for someone with purpose and for someone that isn't with someone that's going to grind them down. Like my wife always lifts me up. She doesn't spend any money. Even now we've got money. She doesn't need it. She's not always having a go at me for what I'm doing. If I come back late and she's made dinner, she never complains. She doesn't say, I made you dinner. What happened to you? You know, you've changed. It's 8:00 and you're not home. She's never done that. You know, and you don't want that in your life. You need someone that's with you, that's going to understand you, that's going to let you be you. And the partner is such an underrated part of that equation.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
You have mentioned before on podcasts that you think sales is like the most important thing that people must learn. Now they kind of use the term marketing, but you say sales and marketing is usually kind of the same thing. How would someone use sales that's working maybe like a W-2 job? Why should the average person that's not working sales learn sales? And like, what is sales?
Sales is the way that you can make anything real. If you think you're not a salesperson, then you don't know how the world works. You either control your narrative or someone else controls it for you. When you go for an interview, you're selling. When you meet your partner, your potential partner, you're selling. When you're walking down the street, picking your nose, thinking no one's looking, you're selling, right? People don't realize personal brand is not a choice anymore. It's either something you explain what you are or someone else explains what you are. Ideally, what you explain and what they explain should be the same. Sales is just a formula. Now, you can be an introvert or an extrovert and still sell. You just use different tools. Okay, so I'm an extrovert salesperson. I can knock on a door and I can get someone to let me take care of their garden. Okay, but I was never taught sales. I was just authentic in that moment. And I think that person probably took pity on me. Right? So I think sales is the opposite to what we think it is. People think sales is a car salesman. You want to buy this car, brakes don't work, but I'm not going to tell you. No. True sales is just you being you and telling a story. And everyone can tell a story, right? Now, some people might tell it through music because they're shy. Some people might tell it through a drawing because they're embarrassed to talk. But storytelling is how you sell. So all you need to do is learn how to storytell. Now, I know people, I just interviewed on my podcast, Russell Brunson, and he did ClickFunnels. And he basically sells through, he's an introvert. People don't realize he's a big introvert. He sells through email. So he literally sends an email saying, hey, how you doing? Did you have a good day today? I'm going to send you an email tomorrow about how to change the world. See you tomorrow. I told you I was going to do it today, but I fell asleep early and I haven't written it yet. But have you having a good day? I hope you are. See you tomorrow. Oh, here it is. Here's the secret I was telling you about. I just finally got it written. You know, his storytelling in email. That's sales, right? It's not a car salesman. It's not Steve Jobs. People have slightly got a misunderstanding of what sales is. Anyone can sell. Selling is just 3 steps. This is how you sell anything to anyone. And people get it the wrong way around. The first step is, does the person you're selling to actually need what you're selling? You can do that through research before you even send one single email. You don't need to go and sell them something they don't need. Because selling something you don't need is really hard. That's a different type of sales technique, right? And that's a scammy type of technique where you sell something people don't need. I don't like that sort of sales. Do your research. Find out, does that person actually need you? The second thing you do in sales is build a relationship. It took me 9 years to get Apple as a client in my last business, right? And I never actually sold to them. I got to know the people in the organization. I got to understand their frustrations, their needs, their problems. And then 9 years into that relationship, I sold something to them. So sales is a process, and does that person like you and do you like them? The first step that everyone knows and everyone thinks is the first step is, here's what I do, here's the price, here's the contract, are you interested? That third step is the easiest step in the world if you get the first two right. If they need you and you need them, and they like you and you like them, I've not had a single deal that hasn't happened if I got the first two right. In fact, to an extreme, I did a deal with the Wall Street Journal to use my company in Asia, and I said to them, this is my contract, this is my price, this is my service. And the guy who was running it said, double your price, Simon, you've underpriced it. That's what happens if you get sales right. Right? It's like, you made a relationship, they need you, he doesn't want me to go bankrupt. He wants me to do well. He knows what the market rate is. Most people go in there with, what should I charge the client? Okay. No. Relationship, understand them, get them to know what you do so they truly need it. And don't sell to people that don't need it. Right? No salesperson can easily sell without some sort of NLP bullshit trick. No one can actually sell to someone who doesn't need something. Right? Identify the need. You know, it's the old, I've forgotten his name, sell me the pen. People, do you know, I ask people what that means. They misunderstand it. Right? What that sell me the pen story is all about, a lot of people, even though they watch the movie, they don't understand it. Right? People, that selling that pen is about understanding whether or not the person who you've asked to buy the pen from needs a pen. So if I say to you, you want to buy a pen, most people, the pen is beautiful, silver, you're going to love this pen, it's the best pen I've ever seen in the world. No, I ask you, you're going to sign this contract now and I'm going to invest in your company. You got a pen to sign it?
No.
Okay, you want to buy this pen? It's $10, but we're going to sign a contract worth $1 million. So if you want
is it a good pen? I don't know.
Does it matter? It's going to help you get this contract.
Okay, well, if it makes me $10 million, I suppose I would pay 10.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
It's very simple. It's just understanding the demand side. But people jump straight to the third step because they misunderstood what sales is. And sales is marketing as well. People try to distinguish the two. I mean, a lot of gurus do this. Like, marketing is different to sales. Everybody I ever meet is in marketing, and I break down what they're doing. I'm like, you're not in marketing, you're in sales. Sales sits on top of marketing. Marketing is like PR. There's loads of different elements of marketing. PR, social, meetings is a form of marketing. Individual brand identity is marketing. Sales is the top of it all. And it's not a dirty word. It's the word that will make you rich if you learn to embrace it and understand. If you learn to sell, you'll get the perfect partner. You'll get the job you wanted. And I don't want people to get a job, but still, learn sales and it will help you. Right? And if you're an introvert, learn introverted sales techniques. If you're an extrovert, learn extroverted sales techniques. But there will always be the same 3 steps I just said.
What are the best resources for people to figure this stuff out for themselves?
YouTube. Yeah. And only listen to people whose lives you want. There's a lot of people out there who will tell you how to do this and how to do that. Just check on their lives. Do you want their life? Because if you follow their advice, you'll have their life, assuming they're not lying, right? Because there's a lot of people out there bullshitting with, Lamborghinis behind them and they actually broke, right? They rented it for the day. Yeah, so do your research. So I try to be very clear with people, only listen to people whose lives you want. And that includes your parents. If you're taking advice from your parents, look very carefully at your parents' life. Are they living their dream? Are they living how you want to live? Because if you listen to them, that's what you will get their life.
So how does school and society brainwash you? Because I've noticed you say this quite a bit, that society really trains you to be a certain way.
Yeah, and I'm very careful of this because I don't want to lean towards conspiracy theories, okay? But I think we all know the school system doesn't work. I haven't met anybody that doesn't actually admit it. I think the school system was openly discussed by the people that created it, Carnegie and Henry Ford. They openly discussed it. It's online. You can read what they said. They didn't want people thinking. They wanted people memorizing. They wanted people, Henry Ford in particular, wanted people to be able to afford a car, go on 2 holidays a year, but come back to the fucking factory, right? Sit down, shut up, don't collaborate. When you're doing an exam, don't collaborate. You've got to learn it all on your own, mate. Now, in the real world, it's completely the fucking opposite. You want to be successful, stand up, be different, stand out. collaborate. Like, I wouldn't be here today if people hadn't helped me. There's no such thing as a self-made millionaire. I didn't sit down and do an exam on my own. I had people help me. Everything school teaches you is exactly the opposite to how the real world works. So it's not a conspiracy theory. That's fact, by the way. Right now, the other thing that school does is it frames success up. It says to you, every single school in the whole world is the same. It's fucking insane. It's insane. They ask you, what will you do when you grow up? That is a trap question. In sales, we call it a trap question, right? It basically makes you instantly default to the natural instinct of, oh, I'll be a doctor. I'll be a lawyer. It traps your brain into a particular frame of mind around a particular thing you're going to do, like a robot. That's how you get you program a robot to do a certain thing. The question that should be asked, and this is all I would change initially in the education system, is the question you ask is, what problem are you going to solve? This is the question I asked my 7-year-old since he was 3, since he could talk. What problem are you going to solve, mate? What problem are you going to solve? Right? He laughs at first, he giggles. Now he watches David Attenborough, and you know what he says? The 6th extinction is coming. I want to try and help avoid that from happening. And he says it with calm passion. Maybe he'll be a doctor for a while. Maybe he'll be a lawyer for a while. Maybe he'll master AI. Maybe he'll be a social media influencer. Maybe he'll do all of those things because he cares about the problem, not the pigeonhole that the fucking education system tries to pin people into.
Do you send your kid to public school,
No, it's
private school, homeschool?
And again, I say homeschool. What do you think?
Well, I feel like I grew up during a time where if you think of homeschool kids, they're usually a little awkward, socially inept, kind of strange. Our experience of extracurricular activities, and there's a homeschool kid there who is usually by themselves, afraid to talk to people.
Maybe they were homeschooled because they were already like that.
Could be.
But now it's different. Like, homeschool is the revolution coming our way. I fucking hope so. Because my son, okay, there's just this is funny how society gets so used to these frames, right? We have to reframe it. But this is the society frame we presently believe to be real. We send kids into a classroom from around, I don't know what it's like in America, but in England, it's 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And on average, classroom size is about 28 kids. Yeah. And they sit in that room all day together. Now, I like you guys. We just met. I like you guys. But let's say every single day for the next 3 years, we're in the same room 5 days a week from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're 28 of us in this room. We're going to go fucking nuts, aren't we? Do you want to put up your hand and be different in that environment? Right. Plus, the other problem with the school system is they're all the same age. Okay, because again, this isn't natural. In tribalism, which I really believe is how we should be living, you have a 14-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Right? Each of them have a sense of responsibility you don't have bullying in this situation, by the way. The 14-year-old regulates the 7-year-old. The 7-year-old looks after the 3-year-old. The 3-year-old looks up to the 7-year-old. 7-year-old looks up to the 14-year-old. Right? You're not meant to do it by age the way they do it now. So homeschooling is the beautiful solution to it. Now, I'll caveat this with saying right now, because homeschooling is not mainstream, it's expensive. One partner has to stay at home to look after the child. But by the way, my wife is the main primary looking after person for my son. But every single day, she's out and about in some shape or form. My son lives like we live. In the morning, he wakes up, he has breakfast. He draws a little bit. And then one of his friends comes over and plays for a few hours and they do Lego. And if it's not raining, they go out for lunch in the park. In the afternoon, they go to a forest together with another friend and who happens to also be a friend of my wife's, the mother happens to be a friend of mine. And they spend the afternoon picking daisies and talking about plants and realizing that nettles are one of the most amazing products. And nearly every single pharmaceutical product that makes people better has nettles in it. Right? So they learn all that in a day, like literally a beautiful day out. That is homeschooling. He's not sitting on his own with my wife learning maths all day. People have got it completely wrong. And now here's the real reason why this is actually presently unobtainable for people. 30 years ago, having one income was enough. Having a second income was either a privilege or slightly weird. Right? You're not at home looking after your kids, yeah? Now, the things have got so expensive, property's got so expensive, life's got so expensive. Now, there's no fucking choice but to have 2 parents at work. So that means that kid can't have what I'm talking about right now, which is why, again, I'm fighting against this because I think homeschool should be an option and communities coming together can make homeschools possible. So my wife does drop off my son at a forest school on a Wednesday and he's with a load of other parents that happen to be running the forest school. And then sometimes a load of parents drop people at my house, kids at my house, and my wife looks after them. She does homeopathy and herbal medicine. So she'll do a little herbal medicine class. So they share the responsibility of the education, just like we used to in tribes.
But there are certain things that are undeniably traps. Like you said, like if your son was in a public school system, that would definitely work counterproductively for him. If, let's say, he got into playing video games all of the time, that would be another trap that worked counterproductively for him. What would you say are some traps that people should watch out for to make sure that they're not just always like shackled by this like brainwashing, always attention going in certain areas and lacking the belief that they have the freedom that they have to live the life they want?
Addiction is the biggest weakness in humans. And so, but we can get addicted to normality. We don't question things. I think people should question everything all the time. What I'm saying on this podcast, question it, right? Do your research on me, question everything. And if you have a questioning mind, it's quite freeing. So I didn't when I was younger. I believed the media. The media made me think England was the best place on the planet. I thought England had roads and we were safe. And it wasn't until I left England I realized it's not the best place in the world. So I thought like question healthy skepticism about things, I think is good. I also like to think positively, but I think having that thing where you always just double check. It's what I've just been told or what I've just heard. Is it true? And I think if people apply an element of skepticism in a positive way to their lives, they can figure out what's right for them. And I think people should check if they're addicted to things. And just if you think you might be addicted to your phone, put it away for a week. Just get rid of these things for a while, right? So I've got an addictive personality, so I've never drunk alcohol and I've never done drugs because I think those things are so powerful that if I start them, I won't be able to stop. The only addiction I think I've got, and people listening on audio might think I'm obese now, but it's food. I'm not obese, just in case you're listening on audio. But I love food. And you know what I realized? I do eat chocolate. I don't drink alcohol, but I do eat chocolate. I do like sweet things. And I've realized that food is the only addiction I've got no choice but to indulge slightly because we have to eat, right? We actually have to eat. So I can't avoid it. I can't cut it out completely. But it is really interesting when you try to take something. If you think you're not addicted to social media, put it down for a week, right? At least start to bring yourself off it.
It's interesting what you say about addiction. That's how you're supposed to, that's the thing you're supposed to avoid. And it's not only being skeptical of yourself, but it's always challenging yourself, because if you never go, or if you're always unchallenged, I feel like you're never going to be met with resistance. You're never going to have to improve. So I think the skepticism is a key thing. Yeah, because a lot of people also won't challenge you, like external sources, and you can't rely on that because maybe they will, maybe they won't. So you have to rely on yourself to always be challenging yourself, being skeptical of yourself, questioning things.
I think you should also be positive, somehow mix it in there with positive. Like I see a lot of people spouting conspiracy theories with no solutions. I feel like we need to be like optimistic about the world to make the world a good place in the future. If we're not optimistic, it probably won't happen. I think optimism is one of the things that I've noticed in successful people. Even to the point where I actually think that the 15-year-old me, I was lucky to have that life. That experience is giving me, I love my life today. I'm doing a job I love. I've got a purpose, a mission. I love it. And I wouldn't have had any of that if I hadn't had bad luck. You need bad luck to have good luck. So even when, and I noticed this, really successful people when their businesses fail, they say, oh, well, I learned all these lessons. I wouldn't be, I've had a few businesses fail. I wouldn't be successful today if they hadn't failed. Like I've learned more from my successes than I've learned more from my failures than my successes. And I think that's the thing that, people need to be more positive about even the worst things that are happening to them. It's like, it's cheesy, but it's all happening for a reason.
Speaking of that, you're really known for walking up to strangers and saying, what's your dream? Is there anything that really stands out to you?
I think I've been doing the biggest human survey in history. It's been fascinating. The thing that stands out is how people have lost confidence in themselves. And I don't know where it gets lost in their upbringing, but like nearly everybody doesn't really believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. Very rarely. People don't believe a dream is possible. Even in a country like America, where it's built on the American dream, people don't believe it's possible for them or that it's not the right time for them. It's shocking to me. And so sometimes I feel like I'm doing an intervention in their life in that moment. And do you know what I see? I see sometimes people have dead eyes. And then when they just for a moment describe their dream, their eyes light up again. So I think some people have literally turned off the actual thing that makes us human, the ability to see the future, the ability to make something real from our head into the real world. Some people have just suppressed it so much. And I don't just blame the school system. I think it is generally like probably, parents, don't be silly, get a real job. Don't be a YouTuber, get a real job. Like it's been suppressed down in people. But I noticed that you just give people the chance to tell their dream, and you give them a few ways to make it happen, how different people can be. I've seen people literally physically change in the 90 seconds I've done the video with someone. 90 seconds. I've seen them change. They go from downbeat, the world's got them broken, their dream's not possible, they've given up on their dream, even they don't have a dream, to like literally a bin man the other day. I walked up to a guy who was filling up the bins. We've all walked past this guy and not even noticed him. And I walked up to him and he was really depressed. I haven't released this video yet. He was really depressed, putting stuff in the bin. And I went up to him and said, "What's your dream?" And he went, "I want to be a game programmer." I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to fund it. What do you need?" It's like, "What? What's his real?" The camera's there, he thinks it's a joke. Like, you just see people literally, his posture changed. His eyes changed color almost, like light came on. It's like, this is possible? It came out of fight and flight for a second. And it's blown my mind seeing it. Like I'm addicted to it. I'm not just doing this for other people, I'm doing it for myself too. I'm addicted to seeing people come alive, like it's like unplugging a machine.
Yeah. What stops people from then taking that and running with it? Because I bet if you ask 100 people, what's your dream? They get really excited. They have that response. There's going to be a section of people that just get excited in the moment, and then reality sets in again. And they're like, "Nah, I can't do it."
That's why I don't really like motivational speaking. I do motivational, but I don't really like motivational talks or posts, because they're very short-term doses of adrenaline for people. I go back to purpose, and it's a very fluffy word, but I think it should be asked at school. If people have a purpose, they don't stop. So the real trick is not motivating people in that moment. The real trick is figuring out their purpose and motivating them around that purpose. That's what makes people follow through. Like, why do nurses go to work when they're so badly paid? Because if they don't, someone might die. If they don't go to work, someone will be in pain. They're motivated by the purpose, and they will go. Even though they're badly paid and badly treated, they'll go, right? And I think that's the trick. It's not about motivation. It's about purpose. It's a word that people hear that's so fluffy. It's so important. If you get that instilled in someone, I don't need to. I've got a team of people. I have never once managed any of them in the present company I've got, because I hired them all around the purpose that we have, right? To free humanity. I don't tell them what to do every day. They get up before I get up. They go to bed before me, after me. You know what I mean? Point is, they're motivated, right? They're so motivated. And I think don't manage people, manage purpose, because a lot of people get frustrated in their businesses. I'm managing people and it's so tiring. I'm like, well, you don't have a purpose then, do you? So I think that's the difference. And I'm not there to motivate people. I'm there to help them find their purpose.
What would you say is the biggest success story from the videos, going up to someone and asking them what their dream is?
The individuals in the video, we are helping them. No doubt about it. And we have a whole system for helping them. We put them in a group of mentors. We have a platform called helpback.com with 160,000 people on there to help them. We promote their businesses online and get hundreds of millions of views each month, hopefully for their dreams. But the really interesting thing is not the people in the video. The people we are actually helping the most are the people watching the video. So on Instagram last month, I just looked at the analytics before we came in. We had just over 101 million views on our Instagram content last month. And when I look at the DMs, it's people saying, "I just saw Sarah not singing. It's made me decide I'm going to sing. I'm going to go for my dream." Or "I heard Mark say he wanted to do this business. He's not going to do it. I'm going to do it. I've done it." Or people have started businesses because they watched the video and realized that I've called bullshit on their own bullshit. So it's people watching the video that were helping more than the people in the actual videos. But that being said, there's some people I'm really proud of that have started businesses, and I just name them all. They feel bad. If I miss anybody out on that list, I'll feel bad. But there's people I really do respect who have shared their really painful backstories and then gone out and used that pain to do something good. And I think to me, there's a whole list of people that I'm quite proud of around that.
You also have another somewhat controversial take that houses are liabilities.
I can't believe we got this far into the podcast before this came up.
Yeah. Saving the best part to the end. Could you walk us through the train of thought?
Okay, so we better frame it up better for the audience, because they're going to wonder what you mean. I have an issue with the property business, generally speaking, and not with the people in property business, with the property business. So I always kind of, maybe when I'm trying to explain this, just say, first of all, I'm not mad. This is just a theory. And just because I have this theory doesn't mean I'm right, okay? But monopoly was invented by a woman. You know this, right? Monopoly was invented by a woman to highlight the problem when you put property and capitalism together too closely. So what she originally wanted to do, she had a monopoly with the land is owned by no one, and people move around the board and live in the properties and everyone has a harmonious life, or you have one where people buy the land, what happens in the end? Only one winner, right? And it will probably be some big corporation like BlackRock. That's my prediction. But one company ends up owning everything because it's all a question of price, right? So taking that kind of like example in mind, unfortunately for her, the capitalistic monopoly caught on, and then a games company bought it and made it monopoly, right? But she originally designed it to show the problem of property and capitalism together. So my main principle around property is that if you live in a house that you own, people mistakenly think it's classed as an asset. Right? This is rich dad, poor dad, so, education. It's not an asset, it's a liability. And people really don't understand this. So I'm like, that's probably basic number one, understand how money works. If you own the house you live in, even if you own it, forget if you mortgage, that's a whole different thing. Mortgage is actually still owned by the bank, right? The bank's borrowing money against your property. So you don't own it, the bank does. Maybe one day you'll pay it off if you don't have lifestyle inflation and increase the length of the mortgage, or interest rates go up, or you miss a couple of payments or whatever. Hopefully, if all goes well, you'll own it, hopefully, in 30 years' time, but it's not. So that's fundamentally point one, right? People make a huge mistake. They don't understand how money works. They think that the house is theirs, and they think that the house is an asset. It's not. It's a liability. You think I'm right about that bit?
No.
I do. I think you can be right, and I think you could also be incorrect.
Yes.
I think it's a very nuanced thing. I would say for a lot of people, a house is a liability in the sense that if they overextend themselves to buy the nicest house they can, if they don't keep it long enough, if they buy a house, live in it 5 years, sell it, they break even maybe, and they buy an even more expensive house and they stay on the treadmill, yes. I think it can be an asset if they buy it strategically to either save money on rent, live in very long term because they have to live somewhere, fix it up, which most people aren't doing, or they do the house hacking method of renting out bedrooms or buying multiple units and renting out the other units, living in one. Most people don't do that. So I'd say for a lot of people, it's a liability, but it can be an asset.
Isn't your primary residence like the number one wealth building
it is,
by all data?
It is, but because people are so bad at saving and investing. So it's like the one thing they're forced to do ends up helping them in the long run, and property values have trended higher. But if you invest in the S&P 500 long term, you actually outperform by many multiples. So it's like, yes, it is. It's like better to save something than nothing, but only because people are so bad at saving money.
Since the 1970s, if you invested in gold, you'd make more money owning gold than you would owning a property, based on present property prices versus property prices in the 70s. But gold has no, other than storage, no maintenance cost.
But what about 1980s or 2012?
But it does skew when you look at like after because the 70s, you ran up in gold prices when they went off the gold standard. If you look at it at any other date, it starts to skew. But overall, at least in the US, property values have increased basically 1% beyond inflation historically. And so it's not that good of an investment, but it can be. But just about anything else could be a better investment.
I would say like the one piece of advice that I would lend to people is just to be very conscious of your finances. So like a house could be an investment in the same way it could be a liability. A credit card could be an asset in the same way it could be a liability. All of these things could either serve you or not serve you. And so to be very conscious and observing those things is probably the best thing that you could be doing.
Here's what I see right now is that a lot of people are, and I'll use the term brainwashed, to believe that buying a house is always a good investment, or that buying a house is the right choice, or that you achieve some sort of social status or milestone by buying a house without doing the math and determining if buying a house is actually the financially sound method. Because right now renting is way cheaper, at least over the next 10 years, than buying a house is. And if you buy a house and you don't do that math, and you're like, oh, buying a house is better because I'm paying down the mortgage, it might not be. So that's what I see.
And I think people don't move where the opportunity is. They live where their house is. So, I'm being general here, right? Because there's always exceptions.
Yeah.
But I think, of course, there are examples where people break the rules, but most people buy a house. I remember when I made that first bit of money, that £50,000, everybody said to me, buy a house. Okay. And I think what I've managed to do with that £50,000 building businesses, and what I've managed to see the world and experience things that if I bought a house, I'd be probably in that house now, like wishing I had a bigger house. It's kind of like, especially when you're young, I'm really generally on property stuff. I'm really like, traveling is so underrated for people, experiencing different places. Move somewhere where the opportunity is. Don't get a house and get stuck, right? And that's what happens to a lot of people. But I think my personal take is when you get to 40, if you haven't made it, probably buy a house. You get a mortgage deal, and maybe then when you're retired, you can have it paid off, and then you can sell it to live in an old people's home. I don't know, but like, it's not my favorite way of building a life.
But we also don't know necessarily what would have happened had you bought a house. So for example, we've spoken to so many people.
I remember the house. I look at it sometimes that I almost bought. I know exactly what happened to
it. But let's just say you bought that house and the property values went up, and then you're like, okay, well, maybe I can pull some money out, and then you buy another house and then you build. Because we've had so many people that are like real estate moguls on the show, and that was exactly how they got started in real estate, and then they became an agent, and then
now we're talking about property as a business. So that's different. Right? I absolutely think property can be a business. This might lead us quite well into the podcast we're going to do with you in a minute, where we can talk about this in a minute in more depth, right? From a financial point of view. I absolutely think property can be a business. So now what you're talking about is property as a business. So people are educated enough to realize that maybe they sell that house, they take that equity and they buy a house. My parents did this, by the way. They bought a house, they did it up, we all lived in it, made it look like a nice family home, and then they sold it and we moved into another house. And then they did it up, made it look like a family home, and sold it. For more money, we moved to another home. And then eventually they bought 5 properties and then 10 properties and then 30 properties. And the 90s came and the mortgage rate went up and they had to give all the keys back to the bank and they lost everything. So I've got my own personal experience with this brilliant property business. But I do think times have changed, and certainly in the last 10, 15 years, properties have just kept going up. Interest rates were kept low, and there's certainly been like a magical time for property. My real issue with property is the moral code side of it. Okay, because again, I can talk about England better than I can America. But in England, there are nurses, doctors, and police who literally are on food stamps because they can't afford their rent. Okay, so what's happened is buy-to-rent business has boomed. People have come and bought property, rented out for huge amounts of yield, 8%, 6%, whatever people are trying to get. And then the people renting can't afford to buy because the prices have gone up. And now they're literally like the person who's tonight in England, a rich person landlord is going to go to an emergency ward, and the nurse who's going to try and save their life is eating food, going to go food stamps to eat. Can't pay their mortgage, rent, can't get a mortgage, impossible to buy, can't afford their rent. Like tired, stressed out, can't look after their family properly. But don't worry, that landlord got 8% yield out of it. So my issue is more like it's definitely a business, but it's got out of control.
Now, what's the alternative to that? Because then it would be government housing. And I see this as a real estate person. And for me, I've been once to London and I've seen how packed it is. There's just not enough land to build more units without tearing them down and reconstructing the whole thing. So my understanding is that zoning regulation prohibits bigger units or taller
high density
buildings.
Housing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a core problem that would need to be addressed, or you're going to have that issue.
So England has a lot of green belt restrictions. Again, look, I'm not a policy maker on property. I'm not really in the property business. I'm just showing I'm flaring a little bit of a warning sign, because every young person I meet, when I say, what do you want to do? I want to buy property and rent it out. I'm going to borrow someone else's money and buy a property. And it's just got a bit out of control. I'm just like, are you sure you want to be in this business? Because there is a limited amount of property, and like being a landlord isn't as easy as it sounds either. Like, again, I think a lot of the time people think it's some easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. If you've got a small property portfolio and you're managing 3 o'clock in the morning and the washing machine's broken, it ain't an easy thing to do. So just be careful. And people see it as passive income. I'm like, no, it's not. You have to go. So I attack it a little bit more from a business point of view, and it's got so out of control in England in particular that I'm just throwing up a little bit of a warning. When it comes to how to fix it, I'll be honest, I haven't got the exact solution, but I think a combination of like releasing greenbelt land,
probably,
yeah.
And for that, we're talking like front yards or backyards, like, or
partly, but also parts of land that's being classified as woodlands that need to be protected. Which, yes and no, but if humans don't have somewhere to sleep. In England, there's 250,000 homeless people, right? Registered. That's just a registered. So this also personally goes back to my homeless period, right? Mm-hmm. That is humans on the street, nowhere to sleep. That is madness, right? That's the highest amount in history in England, 250,000 people. And a lot of that is mental health issues. So, you need to build hospitals where mental health is taken seriously. So there's that element, drug addiction, but that comes from living on the street a lot of the time, right? They're not on the street because they're drug addicts. They take drugs to numb the pain of living on the street, right? But I just think there needs to be a little bit of a different strategy. Like, and yes, I'm a capitalist. I made all my money being a capitalist. But I think there comes a point where you get judged by a country judged by how you treat the poorest person. And if we can't pay a nurse or a policeman more money, which is fair enough, there's not more money, there's no money tree, is what they say in England, there's no money tree, then how can they afford the rent then? So if we want them to take a low salary and do that job and protect us and keep us alive, then we should give them accommodation. Now, build it near the hospital, build it on the hospital. I don't give a fuck. But we can't have both ways, can we? We can't pay them nothing and expect them to save our lives and give them really expensive rent in a very capitalistic structure.
You also mentioned that you can pick your location. So in that nurse example, what's stopping them from going to a different location where rent is cheaper? They earn a similar or the same amount, but they're able to save way more because rent is less.
Different human survey needed there for me to give you an actual factual answer. But my instinct would be the hospitals in London, for example, are in dense populated areas. So to get there, suddenly you've got, and people do, by the way, they move out of London and then they've got huge train costs. I mean, again, England's a bit broken. Cost of getting from, say, from one village, it's cheaper to the hospital. Now the cost of the train was the same as rent. So, you're not saving by moving out. You're now causing yourself a commute, which is tiring. And now you're costing yourself train and public transport, which is ridiculously expensive. Like crazy.
I meant switching jobs outside of London.
Okay, switching jobs, that's happening.
Yeah.
You've got a serious teacher deficit in England right now. People don't want to be a teacher. It's low paid. People can't afford to live.
Yeah.
So literally, I'm be careful how I say this, but a lot of brilliant teachers aren't becoming teachers. They can't afford it. So they want to get into banking, or they want to get into property. Right, and they're not going where they would naturally go.
But couldn't you also say, based on your other arguments, that teachers are becoming a thing of the past in the sense that
they're not. They will,
but in the sense of the classroom setting.
Yeah, they should be, but they're not.
That sort of environment. So,
but
in the future,
needed.
it could be that people are learning at their own pace from something that's designed by AI based on the strengths of the student that tailors everything to exactly what they want to learn or where they could solve problems.
Yes. Again, sometimes when I think about my own thesis, I split it into now, today, and 5-10 years from now.
Sure.
Right? 5-10 years from now, I hope that's the case. Right? I hope teachers, weirdly, I saw something saying today that Chipotle, they're replacing 75% of their workforce with automated machines that are making the food, right? And when I saw it, I was actually happy because these are jobs humans shouldn't be doing anyway. They're too fucking clever, right? So, but I think that you have to split it into two timelines. Right now, today, there is a teacher shortage in England, right? That's a problem now because AI is not in the classroom and people aren't being taught and most of the kids are restricted to get online anyway, right? So unfortunately, we still need teachers, and I mean that with love because I love teachers, but the teachers should be in the classroom, but they can't afford to be in the classroom. So there we've got a gap already. Now, hopefully technology will fill it, but I don't see the school system moving towards that. Literally like laptops is, lately laptops, most kids can't afford a laptop, so it's not even the basic technology. It's been around 20 years, isn't even in the classroom for most kids. So, and then I see 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe with AI, those teachers don't need the teachers. Great. We need to find a job for those people. And then maybe they can move where the opportunity is. But the other thing is that humans are tribal. A lot of people, like my brother still lives in the town I grew up in because his family's there. So he doesn't want to leave. So, if it's so expensive to live with your family and you have to uproot, you need everyone to uproot. It's not so easy to leave and go where the opportunity is, although they should.
Yeah. I do think, though, long-term, people are going to be less dependent on cities. And so perhaps dense cities, what we're seeing right now is the worst of it. And over time, as people can get more done with AI or online, they don't need to be in the middle of the city anymore. I think people can spread out as they should.
Yeah, that's happening.
Most of the US is like completely undeveloped. And when you look at there's like a chart that shows like the population of the United States based on where people live. And it's like everyone's crammed in like 5 different locations and the rest of the country is empty. I don't think it needs to be like that necessarily.
I'm working on a project in England at the moment where we're trying to redevelop a high street into accommodation because a lot of the high streets have died as well. Like Amazon's killed high streets. I'm sure it's the same here. And so there's an opportunity there. I mean, if you're intellectual about it, there's loads of ways to solve it. But I just start with the basics that the people that are serving us and not being well paid for it need to at least have the ability to live somewhere. Yeah. Basic human right is accommodation, right? We can't.
I would love to see higher stories, like higher density and underground.
Right. Yeah.
I think that would be so cool to like be able to go 5 stories underground.
Yeah.
And you would have no idea, like restaurants down there and like
that's happening in certain cities where the value, like my house that I had in London, they dug a basement, 2 basements down. It's incredible. The
Yeah,
house
I think
itself.
tiny homes too. Like if you look at
Tiny
any new
homes, yeah.
development, they're all like 1,900 plus square feet, 2,200, 2,500 square feet here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But if they only made starter homes, which are like 1,000 square feet or 1,100, 1,200 square feet, that would be so much more reasonable. I think it's just a little bit more profitable for the developers.
But
to
Elon
build.
Musk did this, didn't he? He built like that.
Yeah.
He was living in it. I don't know if it was true, but there's a
Box-
little
right.
box house.
A box
Personally, I could live
yeah.
in one of those.
Oh,
You know,
me
give me
too.
a bed, a computer,
Oh yeah, I
Wi-Fi.
loved it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
loved
fine.
it.
You know.
Yeah, they're like 50 grand. One of my dreams, like this was like 10 years ago, I really wanted to develop micro units that you could rent because I remember me throughout my 20s, like all I needed was a bed, a kitchen, and a desk. That was it. And I thought that paying any money for any more than that was a huge waste.
Totally
but there's
is.
nothing that exists like that. I mean, you could find little small studios, but they were like really seedy parts of town. But like imagine in the prime district of like Los Angeles, in the best location, you had micro units
Love it.
of just 300 square feet, just like a 2-car garage, but it's got everything you need. I would love that.
They do it in Japan. They have like,
Yeah.
I think in English they're called coffins. It's not exactly that, but you live in. It's like a coffin. You just, you know,
I've seen it, maybe not to that
yeah,
extent.
but it's kind of interesting.
but-
you know, like
but-
you just need someone
yeah.
safe to sleep at night. You know, that kind of idea.
But the issue, though, with at least California, because I haven't looked into other districts, is purely that they require a certain amount of parking for every unit, and if you can't do that, that won't be zoned. It is. Yeah.
It's 99% Invisible. Do you ever listen to those guys?
No.
It's a really good podcast I listened to, and he talked about how they came in with this parking policy, so that when they built the Google Circle, they've got so much parking to justify that. Like it's like 5 million cars or something need to be able to park there, or something ridiculous like that. You know, like because they made that rule. But this is kind of getting old now as well. Like we were interviewing some kids who are on scooters, and they don't want cars. And Uber, people don't want a car.
No.
They just want to Uber, share an Uber, you know, go on a scooter. So I kind of think like there's all this car parking regulations. Everything's 10 years behind in government structural decisions.
I feel like it's cool to walk places now. Like
Yeah,
we
I
just
love
came
walking.
back from Japan and we stayed in areas where we could walk within like a 3-mile radius. It was so nice.
I have to say, not selling London, one thing I love about London is you can walk everywhere.
I loved it.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
And I really, I mean, I've been trying to walk around Las Vegas, but it's
You
a
can't
little
do
bit
it.
hot.
Here in
Plus,
Las
the roads
Vegas
are
is impossible.
broken. Even though it's brand new, all the paths are blocked. I'm like, okay. Anyway, Las Vegas is great. Come here.
All right,
Simon,
John.
thank you so much for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
We have one final question to ask you before we end this, which is, what is one thing you think you can say that will make the strongest and best impact on the viewer right now?
The purpose of life is a life with purpose.
Thank you, Simon.
You
Thank
forgot
you.
one thing though. To like and
Smash the like
subscribe.
button.
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
haven't
yeah.
done this already, we're going to link to all of your information down below in the description. But seriously, if you've listened to this whole thing over 2 hours and you've not already subscribed, please do it. It's totally free. Takes you a split second. We're going to do our best, by the way, to respond to as many comments as we can. Please subscribe. It really helps with the channel tremendously.
Anything you want to shout out?
Please subscribe.
Oh, your book?
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
No?
Yeah, you can, but
It's coming
I've
out,
enjoyed this
right?
so
It's
much.
January, you
Yeah,
said?
you can pre-order it now if you really want to help me, and all the profits are going to fund people's dreams. So if you want to help, feel
Linked
free.
down below in the description, everybody.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Simon, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Until next
Really
time.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much.